I'm doing my weekly update on my way to work. It snowed at my house last night, on Nimes. So, on this week, I'm going to just kind of be chatting. If there's any questions that pop up in the chat, I'll be taking those. And I'll be trying to translate some of the stuff that I'm saying into Romanian while I'm going through it. So, yeah, like I said, means aseară means it snowed last night. So it snowed last night at my house. It's been pretty crazy weather. Last week it was like 65 degrees Fahrenheit, and now there's like 4 inches of snow at my house. So within just like 3 days, everything's completely changed. I do want to kind of talk about the weather in Oradea. So vremea în Oradea. So the weather I'll probably talk about the weather in like most of Romania, but Oradea is kind of the one that like stuck out most to me. I spent all 4 seasons there, and it was pretty crazy to see Oradea. Like, it would get cold, but I would say it never really like snowed a ton. It almost, not that it was tropical or anything, but you would sit there and you would expect for there to be snow. You would expect, cold weather, which is totally understandable. It was cold. You could see it was cold. You could go outside. You'd have to have multiple layers on. But it hardly ever snowed, and that was really cool to me because it stayed a little bit warmer, I feel like, than other places. So I had spent 2 winters in Romania. One, I was in Oradea. The other one, I kind of spent in between Constanța and Bucharest. And a little bit in Orhei. Like, I went to Orhei in like February. So I was in Constanța in kind of February of that year that I was in from Oradea to Constanța. So I guess I've kind of spent a little bit of winters like everywhere that I went, except Iași. Iași was pretty much spring, summer, and fall, no winter. And the crazy thing was, I felt like Oradea was always the warmest place. And when I was living in Oradea, I would go to places like Sibiu or Arad, Timișoara, some of these other places, and it never, Cluj, and it was always so much colder in these other places. Like, especially Sibiu. Sibiu in the winter was just like, there was snow on the ground, it was cold, things were just totally different in Sibiu in comparison to Oradea. So Oradea was kind of like the perfectly mild, temperate weather. It did have a lot of humidity because they have Crișul Repede, which runs through it, which is just this huge river that is going through Oradea, and it's incredible. I love Crișul Repede. Walking along Crișul Repede in Oradea is like the best thing ever because you get to see how wide the river is. You get to feel, like in the summer, you get to feel that water kind of coming up and like touching your skin. It's absolutely incredible. Such a beautiful river. The walk along it is absolutely beautiful, and you get to see like the Hilton hotels. You get to see all of downtown that basically runs through Centru, the river runs through all of downtown. And so it's absolutely beautiful, but the weather is totally different. And like I said, when you go to a place like Sibiu that's a little bit more up in the mountains, Oradea kind of is on the edge of the mountains. So here's the Carpathians, and Oradea is kind of like on this one side of it. It's not inside the Carpathian Mountains. And so for me, when you go to a place like Sibiu in the winter, it is so cold. It's not as humid, I would say, because you don't have that huge river that you're by basically throughout the whole city. But you're going to sit there and you're going to be freezing cold. It's that mountain cold air that just hits you differently. So that's a little bit about the weather in those two cities. If you do have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. I would love to answer any questions you have about Romania or Moldova. I lived in Orhei, Moldova for like 3 months. So I love the Moldovans. Some of my best friends I still have are Moldovans. But any questions you have about either place, I'd be glad to answer here. So, continuing on about weather, Constanza's weather, kind of in that like February, March, April, May time, because Constanza's like right on the sea, a lot of times you get those, it felt like cold winds, I think from Russia. I wasn't watching the news, so I'm not 100% sure. But those cold winds would come off the Black Sea, and if you weren't bundled up, because of the humidity, it would like go straight to your bones, which is totally crazy to me. So Constanza was like the place, if it got cold, it had the like most chill potential to like freeze you out. Oradea, like I said, totally warm, totally nice, just an incredible place. Sibiu, kind of those mountain cities, Sibiu, Brasov. I never lived in Brasov, but I went to Brasov in the winter. Cold, that cold mountain air, but not as like humid as Constanza, which was just absolutely crazy once those cold, humid winds came and just like penetrated through your coats. I also want to kind of talk about like living experiences in between different cities, and like the differences in between America and Romania, and how like our living circumstances are different. So I've done a lot of research since I've gotten home from Romania and Moldova, and looked at like pricing and looked at what you get in each place. And it's pretty interesting. Oradea was my favorite place to live. I had the coolest apartment there. But like in Constanța, I had an apartment that looked over the Black Sea, which was absolutely incredible. And then in the city of Orhei in Moldova, I had this kind of more rundown apartment, very Soviet, very, very Soviet. It had like 2 windows in it. But it was awesome too, just very different. No elevator. In a lot of my places in Romania, if you had an elevator, sometimes it would work, sometimes it wouldn't. It was just kind of hit and miss, it felt like. So that didn't bother me. I was okay walking up and down stairs. But Orhei was definitely like the most Soviet feeling, the weirdest living conditions away from America. Like, you couldn't get much further away. So if you have any questions about like these living conditions, drop them in the chat. But in Oradea, I lived in Centru a lot of times, or in Nufurul, and those 2 places, like Nufurul has the Lotus Mall there, which is really, really nice to have a mall super close, great shopping there, good food. And then in Centru, I lived in Palatul Mișcoviț. Just this, at the time, it wasn't completely renovated, and so it was kind of worn down, kind of old looking, which was super cool. But the entrance to the apartment, you had to open up this little gate, and you went in, and it opened up to this huge courtyard. And then you walked up these 2 beautiful flights of stairs to your apartment. And I love that place. Like, walking into the courtyard, looking up, you felt like you were in a palace, like a palace that was meant for a king, which at the time it was meant for someone that was super powerful, right? So you walk in, you get to see that. In Iași, I just lived in any normal apartment. I wouldn't say it was anything special. In Bucharest, I lived in an apartment by the metro, which was super convenient. It wasn't like it was a parterre apartment. Like in American, we would call this the first floor, but it's the bottom floor. So you just walked into your apartment, basically. You didn't have to carry anything upstairs. I had an earthquake while I was in Bucharest happen. It was kind of weird. It was like 1 o'clock at night, maybe 2 o'clock in the morning, I guess. And all of a sudden, me and my roommate, we looked at each other. We were We woke up, we looked at each other, and we were like, what the heck is going on? Because we could feel it kind of just like going like that. It was just like the wildest experience to be in an earthquake in Bucharest, and I'd never been in an earthquake before. Where I'm from in Utah, we don't really get earthquakes. Like, we don't really get too many natural disasters, but earthquake is definitely potentially one of them, and I've been in one since I've been to Romania. I'd never been in one before, and it's just a totally different experience. So I would say with my apartments in Romania and Moldova, I was very, very lucky. I had great circumstances, beautiful locations usually. Like even my Orhei one, I played soccer, so I looked over the soccer field that was, it was Milsam Orhei's soccer field. And you could just, like if they were out at practice, you could watch them practice. If they had a game, you could watch their game. There were a couple of times where they had like, oh man, I don't know what it's called. It's called like youth, not youth, women's. Um, it's basically where countries play against each other, but they're like, it's not the World Cup, obviously, not World Cup qualifiers or anything like that, but it was women's U14 or 15, some younger women's age, like friendly event, international friendly. And so we went and watched that game. There were a couple other games going on. I think the one game we did go and watch was like Luxembourg versus Lithuania or something like that. So weird that that was taking place in Moldova to me. But it happened. It was fun. Definitely the difference in between Romania and America for me in living, and obviously there's living like this in Romania too, but in America I have a 4-bedroom house with a basement, just right accessible inside our house, and I have a little bit of a yard, and my house doesn't touch anybody else's. Like, I don't hear anything else that happens on the houses next to me. And yeah, we kind of have like our own personal space where if I wanted to go out back, I could go out back and garden or send my kids out back to play on their swing set or whatever, right? So we kind of have this tendency in America, and it's shifting away from this. It's shifting away from being a place where you have your own home, your own lot, your own space, to kind of like these townhomes. And maybe I can show you because I'm driving right now. So, like I was saying, I have this house, but right here, as I'm driving by, there's these townhomes. These are actually what we in America would call apartments. As you can see, there's probably 3 floors, 2 houses on each side of, and so you're getting a lot of people in. But then here on the left, I don't know if you'll be able to see it because of the sun, but these are townhomes. These are all interconnected, all touching. They're homes. They have a little bit of space, but you can see like they have 2 fences right there. One fence is for the community, and one fence is for their personal use, where they can put like a barbecue, or they can send their kids outside to play or whatever. It's quite a small space. So it's a little bit harder to have that space, and that's kind of what America is moving towards. Whereas in Romania basically had a lot of apartments. I think that probably stems a lot from the communist time, where they were trying to build up these cities and make them a little bit bigger and make them more industrial and, easier to get to work and home and but you can also go and find, like I've looked at houses in Romania, I've looked at houses in Cluj, and they pop up on my Instagram a lot, where I see somebody trying to sell a house, and it's in Voluntar. So it's really good to see the houses in Romania, but they're just different feeling. It's a totally different feeling because America has a space to expand and kind of sprawl out. You're kind of keeping everything close, and everything's kind of staying more concentrated towards these big cities so that you can build the infrastructure, like you can build the metro system out to these new places, or tramway, or buses, or whatever it may be. You're kind of seeing this sprawl in America where everyone's driving. Like I'm driving right now, and I'm behind like 15 cars waiting to get through a stop sign. Whereas in Romania, there are a lot of cars, but a lot of people take public transit too. Honestly, because it's more convenient a lot of times. Like, you don't have to drive. You hop on the bus, and the bus takes you like 20 feet away from where you need to go. You don't need to find parking, which is hard to find. You don't need to worry about traffic, because a lot of times traffic in Romania was a second thought, right? Like, a lot of these cities in Romania were built before we had cars, before we had buses and stuff. So it was built around like people being able to walk. So a lot of times, like in order to make it to your place, you'll have to make like 3 left turns, which is totally fine. And if you're looking for the convenience of a car, that's great. But just totally different from America, especially like new towns in America, especially out west. Out east, like in Boston and New York, you might get that. But out west, you're going to get all of these big expansive roads that all take you to like certain points. You don't have to make 3 left turns to get into an area usually. It's really quite easy to get around with a car, and much harder to get into in with public transportation, just because of the urban sprawl that's been going on. So there's that. As I said, feel free to drop some questions in the chat here. I would love to hear some of your questions and answer any questions you may have about Romania and Moldova. Also, some things with living circumstances here. A lot of times when you go to the grocery store, it's like a planned trip to go to the grocery store. It's not just like, hey, okay, I need some milk. I can go downstairs in my apartment building, and there's a store that's a magazine that's right there at the bottom of my apartment building. So a lot of times you have to plan on how and when to go get food, because it's not just like, okay, I need some milk, or I need a couple eggs, I can go downstairs, or I need some fruits, I'm going to the piazza today. It's a lot more planning than that. Usually you have to plan. For me, you have to drive about 20 minutes to the nearest store, and then from there you walk around the store. There's tons of people in there, so you're all looking up. You have your shopping list that you're going there for, and you're saying, okay, here's this, here's what I need, here's what I don't need. So these are some of the differences in between living in Romania and Moldova, and America. So in Romania, Moldova, you get more public transport. In Moldova, you get something called marshutki and buses. You also have tramvai in Romania and buses, and in Bucharest, the metro. The taxi system, I would say, is a lot better in Romania, especially if you speak Romanian and you can talk to them so they don't cheat you out of anything, because sometimes people try to cheat you from what I've heard. I've never had that happen to me. Most taxi drivers I had were really kind to me, so I have nothing but good things to say about them. So your shopping, your living conditions are different. Public transportation is different. It's kind of a different world, and once you experience both, you fall in love with each one. I would say, for me, the food in Romania was a little bit better, but that could just be like nostalgia kicking in, right? Because who knows, maybe I was sitting there, and because of smells, the sights that I was seeing, the food was tasting better. Not 100% sure, but I would say the food was like overall better and a little bit healthier, even if you were eating fast food. What are some of the other differences? We talked about like differences of yards and like having your own personal space, whereas in Romania you have these expansive parks, but like you don't have your own personal space inside your apartment a lot of times. So that's a difference. Driving's definitely different. I don't know, there's a lot of differences, and once you experience both, I feel like you appreciate both. Like, my commute to work right now is about 30 to 45 minutes, and I wish both, which is super awesome. Like, I really appreciate a lot of things from living in America now, which I didn't beforehand. And I really appreciate a lot of things living in Romania, which I don't think I would have appreciated before I lived in Romania and Moldova. So you'll come to appreciate those things once you experience both of them. And I think no matter where you're born, there are great things and there are not amazing things that happen in your place. But for me, like, Romania did something special. I I know a lot of people are down about Romania, and there's some corruption that's going on and other things, but it's you that can change it. The people of Romania or the people of Moldova can change that corruption. You can fight. You've seen it before. What happened with Ceausescu? People fought. People stood up for a voice, and that is how change was made. And it sucks. It sucks that there's still corruption. Maybe it's not as bad as it once was. Maybe it's worse. I'm not 100% sure. But one thing I can say is I can see the potential of all the people in Romania. I can see the potential of the country becoming a powerhouse one day. It is an incredible country that's filled with intelligent people, funny people, some of like my favorite laughs, and I think some of the people that understood my humor the best are from Romania. And so I see all the potential in the people, in the country, and in what it can be. And also in Moldova, the people of Moldova are very humble. They speak multiple languages. They're very intelligent. I just see all of this potential in these two tiny countries in Europe. And if you can make that potential, if you can fulfill that potential, it will mean the world to your country, to your people, to the future of Romania, the kids in the future, to you. Do whatever you can to fulfill that potential, because it's worth it. Romania's worth it. The nature, the beauty of Romania is worth it. So thanks for joining this live. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to message me on Instagram. You can message me on Bonarescu TV. You can also message me here, I think. I'm not 100% familiar with how YouTubing works on messaging, but feel free to drop a comment if you want to hear me talk about anything, or feel free to message me on my Instagram, and I'd be glad to chat with you, glad to talk about anything, and then come on a live here and talk about the questions you have. So thank you so much for joining. There were quite a few people popping in and out. I appreciate it. I love you guys. I love Romania. I love Moldova. We are here to promote these two countries and to fulfill their potential the best that we can. I love you guys. Thank you. We'll see you later. Ding.